by the end of this week. To my panel, Scott Hodge, president of the Tax Foundation, Alfredo Ortiz, president and CEO of Job Creators Network, Maya McGinnis, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, and Ford O'Connell, chairman of the Civic Forum PAC, also a Washington Examiner contributor. Let me start with you, Alfredo, because you spent time with Speaker Ryan today, and I think he's indicating now that perhaps the House would be willing to bring corporate rates down later, perhaps a year later. Isn't that the centerpiece of this whole thing?
You know, there's a lot of conversation, Charles, about that, but, you know, in talking to Speaker Ryan this morning, I know he's committed with a plan that's put in place. He's very excited about it. I spoke to the president last week, had an opportunity about that. He's equally committed. We know that we have to get something done this year, and I think that's what the plan is right now, at least, is all green.
Maya, by the way, I saw that piece on you in the Washington Post. You're the one that everyone avoids at picnics, I guess. You bring the economic reality. Hit us with the hard economic realities that you like to level at people on the hurdles that still face this bill.
Well, I do, and so we've got the House version, and we'll have the Senate version soon, and this is moving quickly, and that's a really good thing because pro-growth tax reform is very important. The hard truths are, though, that if that tax reform also adds significantly to the national debt at the time when we have near record levels of debt, that is going to keep the economy from growing in the ways that we need. So instead of watering this bill down, which is what we're going to hear, everybody saying, okay, I really want tax reform, but don't touch this and don't touch this, we need to keep our eye on the prize, and that means finding more ways to pay for this bill and focusing on the parts of the bill that will really grow the economy. Because actually what's more important than just a momentary tax cut that's borrowed from the future is really figuring out ways to get tax reform that will help grow the economy and increase wages across the board. That takes some hard choices. My always reminding people that is indeed why not everyone likes to hear the message.
Right.
But it will be so much better overall.
Well, Scott, here's the thing. You have Fitch, who yesterday said that this would only have a short-term impact, if any, and it would not pay for itself, sort of dissing supply-side economics. And then, of course, you've got the markets. The bond market doesn't seem to believe that anything's going to happen, or if it does, it would be ineffective. Are we at the point now where any bill is going to be okay, or should Republicans still focus on a pro-growth bill?
Charles, I think we're only in the first quarter of this long game.
It felt like
here.
The clock was going to strike midnight any moment now. You kidding me?
No. Oh, we got a long way to go here. And as Maya said, we still have the Senate bill to come out tomorrow, and which will be probably significantly different from the House bill. And so it'll be, let's wait and see what the Senate does, because it could make up for some of the mistakes or challenges that the House is facing right now. So I think we have to be really careful about getting too far ahead of the game here and look at the long picture. All of the pieces are in place to make this a very, very pro-growth tax plan. Cutting the corporate tax rate is absolutely critical to this. Moving to some sort of an expensing so that companies can write off their investment of capital expenditures. All of those things are pro-growth, and you have to be careful about the kind of offsets that we choose here so that we don't pick the kind of base broadeners or offsets that actually impede that growth. So there's a real delicate balancing act here, and we'll just have to wait and see how lawmakers respond to that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, Ford, and I know watching the sausage making, we always talk about how brutal it is, but in this particular case, it is extraordinarily critical after the GOP fumbled Obamacare repeal and replace. And I think the American public is losing faith that the Republicans in leadership are going to be able to deliver anything close to what was promised. I mean, a lot of folks are now living with the idea that their taxes are going to go up. A lot of people are living with the idea that there's going to be additions to the debt and we'll run extra deficits. These aren't the things that were necessarily promised, Ford.
No, look, I think the American public is absolutely growing impatient with the progress coming out of Washington. And a lot of folks, after the Republicans got taken to the woodshed in Virginia last night, are very nervous on Capitol Hill. But we know what this is going to take, Charles. It's going to take an inordinate amount of teamwork, and it's also going to take a lot of people basically sacrificing their sacred cows and taking tough votes.
Do me a favor. Give me some of those sacred cows.
Well, okay, do we actually want to have the corporate tax rate phased in, or do we not? Do we actually want to end all SALT deductions across the board? Because if we do, then folks in New York and in the United States House are going to have to take a tough vote. These are all things we're going to have to come together, because what we know, Charles, is very simple. The Democrats in the House are not going to help us. It's on us to work amongst ourselves. In the Senate, we may get 1 or 2 Democrats, but that's it. We're not going to get enough to make 60. We got to make corporate tax reform. We can't phase it in because our competitors abroad are essentially going to beat us to the punch if we go the phased in, and we have to make it permanent to stabilize the market so we can bring back jobs.
Well, businesses
and
aren't going
Charles,
to take this seriously if it doesn't have a certain permanency to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Charles, one thing I was going to say, I mean, they know, the party knows overall that they have to have a legislative win here. And, you know, Virginia, New Jersey, I know those.
Alfredo, I guess what I understand, we all know that they need a win. But is a win really a win? If they deliver a tax plan that's nowhere near what we thought that we would receive, that doesn't deliver what was promised, maybe it's a short-term victory and they put a check on the board, but longer term, wouldn't it do more harm than good?
You know, I think the way we look at it, though, anytime that we can take money out of the hands of our politicians in D.C. and put it back to the American public, whether it's on an individual, a small business, or from a large corporate business, it's a good day. But I think at the end, we also have to realize that once we get this done, there's a couple bites of the apple. We have an opportunity once we keep the House and once we keep moving
Wait a minute,
forward.
I got to interject there. There is no chance that we're going to keep. We may actually lose the House. I think we have to go big. I do not think a win is a win. I think we need to be as ambitious as possible, but also being as realistic as possible.
Right.
Our job is not to sit in Washington. Our job is to help the American people. And if you have to take a tough vote and lose your job, so be it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that, Ford, because a lot of Democrats fell on their political sword for Barack Obama. They lost the Senate, they lost the state legislators, they lost the governorships, but they did what he wanted them to do when they passed his agenda initially. Maya, let's try to figure this out, because okay, you're the tough fiscal disciplinarian, if you will. Could the final bill have a removal of SALT, 1 year delay on corporate taxes, and what about CBO breaking this news? The individual mandate, if they remove that, provides an extra $338 billion. I could see somehow where that could be factored into the final package.
Right. So I think you're asking the exact right question, too, which is, when is this tax bill not good enough? And I'll tell you one thing we really need to look out for. It needs to be permanent. If what this tax bill ends up being is filled with gimmicks because we're trying to get around the hard choices, and yes, we should keep getting SALT, we should remove SALT from the tax bill. We should bring the home mortgage interest deduction down to $500,000. These things are actually sensible tax policy, but they also allow us to do real tax reforms, and the key here is make them permanent. Because if we have things sunsetting and expiring and we have fiscal cliffs, there will be no ability for businesses or families to plan, and it's that kind of certainty that actually promotes economic growth.
Right, nobody's going to take them seriously. Guys, I'm sorry, we've run out of time. I could continue this with you all show long, and we'll bring a few of you back if you don't mind. Next up, though, the Democrats.